It's my pleasure to introduce you all to our speaker today. We have with us Mr. Phillip May. Thank you. Mr. May serves as the CEO of Entergy Louisiana. Entergy is an electric utility company that serves over 1.1 million customers in 58 parishes across Louisiana. And as you may know, the company is a subsidiary of Entergy Corporation, a Fortune 500 electric company which touches communities across Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. Phillip May joined Entergy in Louisiana in 1986 and became CEO in 2013. As CEO, he is responsible for many things, including safe and reliable service, financial performance, customer service, regulatory and public affairs, resource planning, economic development, charitable contributions, and the list goes on. And last year, as you all may know, he was very involved in Entergy's partnership with Meta to support the development of a major data center in Richland Parish. So before I welcome him, as a reminder, please, only members of the working media and members of the press club are allowed to ask questions at the conclusion of the program. So please help me welcome Mr. Phillip May.
Good afternoon. Great to see you all, and thanks for letting me have some time to talk to all you all today. I want to start with just letting you know I've been in this industry roughly 40 years, close to 39 at Entergy, another year working at the City of Lafayette utility system. The state of Louisiana has likely the biggest opportunity in perhaps its history from an economic development, for an opportunity for growth, for opportunity for new jobs and new investments in the state of Louisiana. And I want to share with you what Entergy's role is playing in that economic development and in our energy landscape. As noted, I'm Phillip May, President and CEO of Entergy Louisiana. I've been doing this job at Entergy in this particular role since 2012, as mentioned. It's a job that has evolved over time. We went from a company that had very little growth to a company that has a lot of growth. And so that's transitioning over time. It's a challenge every day when we come in. For Entergy Louisiana, we have been in business 100 years. It's a company that started in North Louisiana by building a power plant and acquiring some distribution systems, starting in Sterlington, Louisiana. We started out, our founder of Entergy started with burning sawdust to make electricity, and now we split the atom to make electricity and are powering one of the most advanced, largest data centers in the world. Today I want to walk you through our key areas important to us. First, no surprise, economic development, and what we're doing to attract new industries and investments to Louisiana. I also want to talk about our technology partnerships. No surprise, I'm going to talk a little bit about Meta and what we're doing to see that happen again and again. I want to tell you about grid resilience. You know, one thing that we are looking at is a need to think differently about how we serve our customers, and grid resilience is going to be a big part of that. And then also future commitments. With our 100th year in Louisiana, I want to talk to you what we see and what we're committing to for the next 10 years. Let's start on economic development. It's something that I really have a passion for. You know, creating jobs, attracting industry is how we grow this state. And, you know, Entergy Louisiana has played a key role in attracting multi-billion-dollar deals and investments to the state, creating thousands of jobs and fueling local economies. You know, over the next decade, Entergy Louisiana's plan is committed to over $100 billion in new economic projects. Now, we started talking about this, and we're talking about, well, what can we commit to in the next 10 years? How many jobs? How much investment? I will tell you, when we first threw that number out on the table, it was a little daunting, a little scary. I will tell you, as we've seen these things develop, as we see what is coming up available to us over the next 3 to 5 years, it has become clear the actions we take over the next 3 to 5 years can clearly set this state up for better economic trajectories, better outcomes for our families, for our communities, forever. You know, Louisiana received a Silver Shovel Award for Area Development Magazine for outstanding economic achievements. We're a top utility in economic development. In fact, Site Selection Magazine has recognized Entergy as one of the nation's top economic development utilities for the last 13 years in a row. More recently, Facilities Magazine, a respected national trade publication for economic developers, named Meta as the Platinum Deal of the Year in 2024, its highest honor and the first time Louisiana has ever received such an honor. Entergy powers and supports key industries in Louisiana, such as manufacturing and petrochemicals. Think about refineries. Think about LNG export. Chemicals such as agricultural chemicals, ammonia for fertilizer, those kinds of things. We provide reliable, large-scale energy solutions to keep those plants operational. We also work with the ports and logistics, powering vital infrastructure, including Port of New Orleans and other economic hubs around the state that make our state successful. And critical infrastructure, ensuring we have uninterrupted power to our hospitals, wastewater treatment facilities, and other critical facilities. Because we're a state that is exposed to extreme weather and those types of events. We also have business support services to attract new industries. For instance, site selection assistance. If you go and you look at Louisiana's economic development site and look for specific sites to land your business, that software is developed and supported by Entergy, and we've made it available not only to the state of Louisiana, but to anyone who wants it. If you're another utility, you can put your brand, you'll never know it has anything to do with Entergy. You can put your brand on that thing, wrap it the way you want to wrap it, and use that site selection committee. And that site to help select the site. And I'll tell you, that was helpful when we were doing Meta, because you can find, I want a site with this many acres, I want it to be this close to power, I need to have water nearby. All of those, you set that criteria, and this thing will find what you need to run your business. We also offer project management and engineering support services, ensuring a smooth execution as those projects make their multi-billion-dollar investments, and financial incentives and energy efficiency programs to reduce operational costs and encourage people to locate in Louisiana. So why does this matter to Louisiana? Well, first and foremost, obviously, we're from here, we live here, therefore we're for Louisiana. But unlike most of the businesses you know, our assets are literally nailed to the ground, in the ground, and if the economy that we experience here is not successful, we will not be successful. In order for us to thrive, the communities we serve have to thrive. So economic development is critically important to us. Let me shift to how we're partnering with tech industry. Technology and innovation are transforming the Louisiana economy, and Entergy is working to position the state as a national leader in this sector. You know, if you go back 10 to 15 years, while most utilities have had flat growth during that period, Louisiana started seeing lots of opportunity around growth. You're talking about chemical processing, material processing. We're talking about LNG export, refineries, and so forth. And so we at Entergy Louisiana have developed a set of skills when people show up. How do we analyze where can we put that particular manufacturer? They need massive amounts of load and they need it 24/7. How do we set that up so that can happen? And through that time, we've developed the capability of responding quickly to load, because whether you are making fertilizer or you're making AI, speed to market is critically important. And that skill set is allowing us now to attract major tech investments. And Entergy is ensuring that, one, to get their electricity quickly, because that's critically important, but also have reliability and infrastructure they need to thrive. You know, we're collaborating with worldwide tech leaders and companies to meet the energy demand. We can't really name who is out there, but the Meta announcement created a lot of interest in the state of Louisiana. It frankly changed the narrative of who is Louisiana. And because of that, we now have people who are keenly interested in how do I, you know, we went from a question of, like, you may be aware that Mississippi has massive investment going on from AWS, Amazon Web Services. And so I think the question went from when Meta first got announced of why are they in Louisiana, to now the question is, why aren't we in Louisiana? And so changing that narrative and be able to produce such an outstanding economic win means that we are able to attract more of those opportunities to improve the outcomes of our families and our communities. I think many of you may have seen some of the discussion around Meta. Little side story on that. So when we went to the groundbreaking in November of this past year, we started talking to Meta in January of last year. It became clear that there might be an opportunity. There were a lot of things that had to go right to make that happen. One of those things would be some law changes and so forth. I'll get on that in a minute. But as we're going through that, Meta was constantly saying, we got to move faster. We're not moving fast enough. You have to move faster. And we're thinking, we're doing pretty good for a utility, right? What we learned when I talked to Kevin Janda, who is the head of their data centers, at the announcement, what he told me is, we've done 25 announcements, 22 are operating. This is by far the most complex, the largest, most advanced, ambitious thing we've ever done. And Phillip, I have to tell you, from the time we first met with you in January to this announcement, and by the way, it got leaked a little early, right? We've never done it faster. So I want you to understand, first of all, this is not about Louisiana. This is not Entergy Louisiana. This is the state of Louisiana made this happen. After we met initially in January, we had a short conversation with the then acting head of economic development and arranged a meeting with our governor. We met with our governor. Interestingly enough, it was just Entergy and the governor. I did invite Secretary of Economic Development, and he asked, well, why? And I said, well, Susan Bourgeois. He said, well, I forgot that I just appointed her. But once we had that conversation, I will tell you, this governor and his secretaries immediately began to work of how do we get this important investment to Louisiana. He aligned around some of the legislative changes. The legislature leaned in, including Speaker of the House and President of the Senate, and legislators from that region, making sure that we can make this happen. And the point I wanted to share with this is, it's important for us to know we didn't just beat another state. This could have been located anywhere in the world. What Louisiana did was essentially win out over every nation, every other state, and it's because of the partnerships we have, the state of Louisiana, with our governor, the Secretary of LED, Susan Bourgeois, and I want you to know that we can continue to win and we continue to help make this state thrive. As I mentioned, for Meta, Entergy wasn't just about power, although power is clearly critical. It was also about Entergy being a one-stop shop. As a vertically integrated utility, we could both do generation and transmission and flex those together and make sure that we can meet their very aggressive ramp time so they can start doing their AR research and their AI work as quickly as possible. That is an advantage that many companies don't have. In addition, we used our site selection tool. They needed 1,400 acres and they needed to be able to expand more. We have not only the access to those sites, but we also have relationships with landowners. We have relationships with some of the local officials and so forth. As we brought those in, Louisiana acted as a team, with our leader being the governor of our state, Jeff Landry, helping to push that process along. And that's how that won, and I think we can see that happen again and again and again. It is really a superpower that this state has that will continue to attract new business to the state. By attracting new business to the state, we are creating opportunities for our communities, opportunities for our families, for our children. You know, if you were at that groundbreaking, I want to tell a quick story. Meta's news got out a little early, and when I was home during the Thanksgiving break, a friend of mine's son, our daughter and son-in-law, had moved out of the state because they didn't think the state had opportunities, a place where they could actually build a career. And when he came in town, when they came back in town to be with their family over Thanksgiving, I got a call from them and they said, hey, can you meet with my son-in-law? He wants to talk to you about what's going on in North Louisiana. As you know, the word got out a little early. And one of the things he started with is, I heard the announcement, I think now would be a good time to come home. And really that's what this is about. With these opportunities, instead of our children going to school, gaining skills and capabilities and moving out of our state, we can see our children coming home, not only because they want to, but because they can thrive. And I think it's a great story of why we're actively engaged in economic development. Just a couple more points I want to make, and we'll open it up for questions. In order for us to continue to attract industry to Louisiana, we need a more resilient grid. The grid we have today was designed at a time when we dealt with a very different environment. One, expectations from our customers weren't that as high as they are. I mean, for my parents, when they were still around, I would call them every time the lights would go out, and I explained to them, oh, look, Dad, this is what happened. There's a tree that fell on a line, it's this far away, and it's going to be on in an hour and a half. And his response, well, they always come back on again. But if you're a big industry here, you can't afford interruptions. And it turns out that Louisiana is one of the most challenging places to keep the lights on in all of the United States. Did you know Louisiana has some of the highest lightning density in all of the U.S.? We compete with Florida for that. The two places that have the highest are Baton Rouge and New Orleans, which are high population centers. For Florida, that density comes in Central Florida, and as we all know, the only person who lives in Central Florida is Mickey Mouse, right? But we also have a very long growing season, and we have the kind of vegetation. We have trees that can grow 15 feet with the right conditions in a single year. It means those trees can grow into our lines, so vegetation and all that sort of thing is very important. We have 60-plus inches of rain, which contributes to those long growing cycles, meaning that we have a challenge to keeping those on. And then the other thing that happens is our ground. Our ground, and many times we have in parts of Louisiana where we put a pole in the ground, sometimes we have to put something on it called shoes, other pieces of the pole, to keep it from sinking in the ground. So all of those things combined, plus the fact that we have just about every varmint known to man trying to get on our lines, combined to mean it's a very challenging place to have high reliability. That's why we're embarking on a 5-year plan to improve the resilience and reliability of the grid. It's important when somebody is coming to make a multi-billion-dollar decision, they need to know that we are investing in a grid that will keep their lights on throughout whatever events occur. And we know that while Mother Nature can throw just about anything at us, we need to have the ability to get the power back on in days, even after a major storm, instead of weeks. And that will give confidence, again, for these companies to make excuse me, multi-billion-dollar investments in the state of Louisiana. And that goes for their workforce as well. They have to know their workforce is going to be able to come to work. Their lights stay on. It's also important that their employees' lights are reliable and resilient through storms. Excuse me. So what we're doing is we've got 2,100 projects, a little more than almost 70,000 poles that we'll be doing over the next 5 years to improve resilience and reliability on our grid. We're also using smart technology so that we can limit the number of impacts from an event that happens. We can't prevent the event, but we can limit how many people are affected by that event and how quickly we can get the lights back on. We're looking at things like smart grid technology. So when we do have an event, we can get the lights on in a certain area. Another thing we're doing is something called power through, where we're making generators available to sites that are important to us. Think about this. So if instead of having the lights out a couple of weeks after a major event, they're out for a couple of days, If your grocery store is still on because they have backup generators, if your gas station, you can still get gas either for your own generator or for your car or whatever. If healthcare facilities, police stations, and those things that make up the social critical infrastructure of our communities are still working, we can hunker down for a couple of days and they could get back up. And that, again, continues to be important for economic investment. And I'll close with this. And we mentioned that Louisiana is 100 years old. Entergy Louisiana is 100 years old this year. As we thought about what should we do to celebrate, the thing that came clear was the thing we most wanted to do is celebrate the state that we're from and for. And so Louisiana 100 plan, and keep in mind it's not Entergy Louisiana 100 plan, it's the Louisiana 100 plan. It's a blueprint that reflects our past 100 years and makes some bold commitments for the next 10. So those commitments are as follows. One, we already have very low rates in the state of Louisiana, and we're committing to keep our residential rates at least 100 basis points below the national average. We're committed to strengthen our grid by doing at least 100 hardening circuit projects each year. We're committed to attracting, and here's that number again, $100 billion of new industrial investment to fuel economic growth over the next 10 years. With that, we're committing to create 100,000 new non-utility jobs associated with that economic growth opportunity. We'll also, over that term, the next 10 years, invest over $100 million in shareholder dollars into our local communities for charitable organizations and for things that improve our families, our communities. And we're committing to $100,000 in monthly labor value through volunteer work on things that are important to you and our employees. We know that real progress comes from strong partnerships between the private sector, public leaders, and community organizations, and we look forward to achieving these ambitious goals. So, I'll close with this. As I mentioned at the beginning, Louisiana has before it one of the greatest economic opportunities I've ever seen. It may be one of the largest opportunities the state's seen in its history. It's going to take leadership and execution to make this happen. Continuing to execute on those things that drive our economy, that help our communities thrive, and can bring our people back to our state. And that partnership will involve, for instance, Governor Jeff Landry, Secretary Bourgeois, the legislature, so that we can be successful and again attracting these multi-billion-dollar investments in the new jobs they bring and the new opportunities they bring for our citizens. We are committed to providing the power for those. We are committed to partnership with those organizations to help our state succeed, and we're committed to make that happen. Entergy Louisiana is more than your power provider. It is your partner for the future of this state. Thank you. With that, I'll take questions.
Yes. Not to rain on the Meta parades, but the useful life of one of these data centers is about 25 years. Given the pace of AI development, you don't know what it will look like in 25 years. What do you plan to do if Meta decides to walk away from that big facility? What will you do with all that capacity?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the question really is, okay, so you got this commitment, you're building, we're building 3 power plants for the load associated with Meta. We're also 1,500 megawatts of renewable. We're putting carbon capture and sequestration on an existing facility in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And those new facilities we're building will be hydrogen capable, so we can reduce the environmental impact of that, and also will be designed for carbon capture and sequestration. But what happens if they're not here? Well, the way we contracted with Meta was done in a way to ensure that our customers are protected from the effects of that. Obviously, there's costs associated with it. Meta will pay those costs. Obviously, if they decide not to renew their bill, what happens to those assets and so forth? Those assets will largely be depreciated, and with the aging assets that we have, we'll have a need for that. And I think it's important to know that with Meta, the way we contracted with that, and as a partner, Meta was agreeable to do that, those contracts will actually produce hundreds of millions of dollars of benefits for our other customers. So let me say it this way. But for Meta, then our bills would be higher than it otherwise would be without Meta. And one of the reasons that is Meta's going to pay for things like strengthen the grid, and as being such a large customer, they'll absorb a lot of those costs that our existing customers might have had to pay. They're going to pay for storm costs, both those that have happened in the past and those in the future, so that our customers will pay less than they otherwise would have to pay. And they pay for the ordinary things that show up on your bill as well. And because of it's really a denominator effect. Because they're such a large customer, they're going to pick up a lot of those costs and produce, again, hundreds of millions of dollars of benefits for all of our customers.
Follow up on that question, I'm sure you saw recently where a company called Seek, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the last name, made an announcement that AI could be possible without the massive investments. It caused NVIDIA stock to literally go down 20% in one day, one of the largest market cap losses ever. How solid is this deal, and do you think that has any, is it all locked in, is what I'm saying, at least this deal is locked in? Microsoft said we're reevaluating $70 billion that they have intended to invest in AI. They're saying they're reevaluating that. So is it rock solid?
Yeah, so this deal is rock solid. If they don't go forward, there are large financial commitments and collateral that they put forth to ensure that we can protect our customers. If they don't go forward, they will have to pay for whatever investments we made for them, plus the additional support that we talked about. And really what you're talking about is there's a Chinese company that put together a tool called DeepSeek, which used, they say, millions of dollars of technology to develop this AI tool, as opposed to hundreds of millions or even tens of billions of dollars to develop these tools. I will tell you that, one, we're talking to a number of tech companies, and their reaction to DeepSeek was not to, wait, let's slow down and figure out what that means. Instead, our reaction was, we need to move faster. We need to think bigger. We need to be bolder on what we do. And one of the things that we need to consider here, if you have a product that you make, let's say you make $500 on it, and your electricity costs you $100. If you find out a way to do it more efficiently, you can still sell it for $500. But now the electricity costs $50 because you're doing it more efficiently, or now the electricity costs $25 because you're doing it more efficiently. Would you make more of that product or less of that product? Our thinking is you're going to make more of that product, and I think that reaction we saw was temporary with NVIDIA. A lot of the tech stocks have recovered since. There's also jitters in the marketplace for a number of reasons, including tariffs and the potential effect that may have on the economy and so forth. And the last thing is, my understanding for Microsoft and some of their pullbacks they've seen is those are largely related to their relationship with OpenAI and whether or not they're going to continue to provide the support for the data centers and the AI technology, as opposed to whether or not they have a point of view on whether or not you should be building this. The future is going to be driven in almost every sector you can imagine by AI. The more they make of that, the more effective it becomes, and so we believe it is a viable solution. But regardless of whether it is or isn't, the way we've contracted with Meta and the way we will contract with all data centers in the future is to ensure that our customers are protected and actual benefits are produced as a result of that contract. Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, how much energy generation does Entergy expect to be needed in the next 5 years because of data center demand? And it's kind of, should we expect a wave of new data centers located here?
So we are building 3 new combined cycle combustion turbine generators. These are natural gas generators. As I noted, they will come with the ability to build hydrogen. If you burn hydrogen, it does not produce CO2. It also comes with the ability to capture CO2 and sequester that through a process called CCS. So we have those 3 that we're building. That's currently on the plans, and that's up before the Public Service Commission for a decision that likely will come in the fall of this year. And we have 2 additional combined cycle combustion turbines that we're building. That is through an RFP process. Essentially what we do is we go out and let out a request for proposal. People will say, we will build that plant and sell you the output through a purchase power contract. That's one way we would do it. They have folks who will make a pitch and say, we will build that plant and then sell it to you so you can operate it. That's another folks. And then we have folks who are within our organizations who will do a proposal for us to build that. The LPSC will look at that and make sure that it's a fair deal for all and make sure we don't have our thumb on the scale, so to speak, and decide to do that. We need these other 2 generators beyond the 3 I mentioned that's related to Meta for things like retiring plants and for growth that's occurring in general. And I think it's important to know that when you look at the state of Louisiana, if you think of it like a boat, if you got the toes of the boat, it's really a peninsula. You can't get power in from the Gulf of Mexico. You can't really get power in from the east. So you have to have this transmission that's going in there, essentially extension cords. We believe it's better to build a generator there because of the exposure we have from tropical storms and other events and so forth. It's better, more reliable, more resilient to have a power plant in southeast Louisiana. We have a similar situation in southwest Louisiana. While you can go further and further west, you ultimately run into a structure called ERCOT, Energy Reliability Council of Texas, and there's no interconnection there. Texas is not only a whole nother country, it's a whole nother grid that you can't interconnect with. So a similar situation there where we can't get power in from the west, you can't get power in from the south. So having a generator in southwest Louisiana makes sense, again, from a reliability, resilience, and right now that's economic. In addition to the gas power plants we mentioned, combined cycle combustion turbines, we currently have an RFP out for 3,000 megawatts of solar. And that's driven by an appetite for many of our industrial customers to have clean, reliable electricity. So we'll have that RFP out there, and then we'll do another 1,500 megawatts of solar associated with the Meta deal. So in all, we will continue to build generation as we have for some time. I want to note that we've had folks who have raised and said, oh my God, we're going to have this terrible time because they're building power plants and the rates are going to go up. We had the exact same thing happen 15 years ago when we started building power plants and acquiring power plants. At that time, our industrial rates were like 4th in the nation. And the allegations were, we're going to end up being one of the highest in the nation. We have built more than 5,000 megawatts or acquired more than 5,000 megawatts of new generation during that period. And today, we're second in the nation with the lowest industrial electricity prices. And residential has consistently been in the top 5 of lowest in the nation. So by building these facilities, we actually can continue to remain one of the most competitive, affordable electrical rates in the country. Other questions? Yes.
I know that you have done the Power Through program for the East Baton Rouge Parish Housing Authority for their seniors. Is that program also available to private, affordable housing developers?
It depends, because we've done that with the Baton Rouge General as well. We've done it some other things, but we have done it with private organizations. The key is how large that generator is. So if it's a single house, that's a little more challenging because of the economics of doing it on such a small scale are a little more challenging. But if it's a large facility, like what we did the Housing Authority, if it's a large apartment, for instance, we can enter into a contract and make those type of things happen. Generally, what has to happen is those all have to be, the electricity is provided by the owner of the facility as opposed to individual meters. But yes, we'd be interested in doing that, and we think it's a helpful way. And the way that works is, if your normal generator costs X, if we have a right to use that when we need to, then we'll provide you a credit. And generally that credit is 30% or so discount as a result of our ability to use it. So it's essentially a lower cost way to have backup generation on your facility. Thank you.
Phillip, you talked about the power plants you're going to put in for Meta. Can you talk about the natural gas, the availability of it, FERC approvals required, may be required for getting the gas pipelines over there, et cetera?
Yeah, so if you live in Louisiana, you probably know you can't dig a hole without hitting a gas pipeline practically. In that area of where this is happening, it's in Holly Ridge, which is essentially between Monroe and the border with Mississippi. There are multiple gas lines, very large scale gas lines that are on that site. That's one of the reasons that made that attractive to us. When we worked with the state to make that site available, we actually rerouted some transmission to make electrical transmission available. And we knew that having water at that site and a massive amount of gas pipelines there would make it an attractive site for a large scale. Now, originally, that site, we thought we would have attracted an automobile manufacturer. And I personally probably was involved in no less than half a dozen site visits with people who could have used it as an automobile assembly plant. The challenge was you didn't have enough workers that had certification in manufacturing. Now, we tried to solve that problem. We did a partnership with the state and Delta Community College to develop a certification for manufacturing. And those, of course, it's a chicken and egg thing, right? As those folks graduated, there were not jobs in that area for them to go to. So oftentimes they were migrating to to Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, where they actually could work. Back to your question. That area is rich in gas. Sterlington, Haynesville, all of it has a lot of natural gas. It actually is a different basin than a lot of what South Louisiana is grabbing, and you have a lot of gas usage in South Louisiana. Henry Hub is the hub for South Louisiana because of LNG export. So to answer your question, we have secured the ability to transport the gas to that site. We have basins that have ample amount of gas, and therefore we believe not only will we be able to deliver the gas, we have the ability to access gas from multiple basins that will be able to fire those facilities for many, many years to come. I heard it said the world is round because it's full of gas. Other questions? Yes?
What impact, if any, do you see this project, yours, Richland Parish, on the Poverty Point World Historical Site that's about 20 miles distant from the Meta facility?
Yeah, so I don't know specifically what action Meta will take on that. I know the site where we have, as far as I know, we don't have any issues with that specific area where we will place some power plants. There's also a number of solar facilities that will be in that area. But more importantly on poverty, Richland Parish has a poverty rate of close to 30%. If you are familiar with that area, the closer you get to the river, the higher those poverty rates go, and higher than 40% as you get to East Carroll Parish and that kind of thing. What's important here is they will be, during construction, 5,000 construction jobs for the Meta part, another 1,500 for the piece that we need to construct. And Dr. Lauren Scott put an analysis together that demonstrated just from our investment, many hundreds of jobs that are direct from our investment, plus, say, a 5 times multiplier or spinoff. So with regard to, I can't answer specifically to Poverty Point, but what I can say with regard to poverty in general, this is how we fix the economic trajectory of our state. This is how we have a state that just has a thriving economy, and this is how we get our sons and daughters to return home to Louisiana, not just because they want to, but because they can thrive when they do. Thank you. Other questions? I want to thank you for the time you spent and for the great questions we have. And I do want to just repeat, over the next 3 to 5 years, we have an opportunity to forever change the economic trajectory of this state in a way that we haven't seen perhaps in the history of this state. What we do in that next 3 to 5 years is going to take leadership and execution. I believe we have the leadership in place to support this through the legislature, through our governor, through Secretary of Economic Development, Susan Bourgeois, as well as the other cabinet secretaries, the local officials. Now it's about executing, making sure that we have these projects go forward, making sure that we can attract other projects. We have a pipeline of economic development that is as broad, deep, and as diverse as I've ever seen in my 40 years in this industry. The good news will keep coming. We have changed the narrative of who is Louisiana and why you should be in Louisiana. What we do over the next 3 to 5 years will forever change who we are, what we do, and how this economy thrives. Thank you.